So as far as where I wanted her to go, there was great potential there, and the character she was a leader. She was also going through a lot of becoming a person on her own. I mean, she came in very strong to begin with, but a lot of her strength was based on her father, and then she lost her father, and it took her a while to begin to believe that she had that strength in herself, that it wasn't just, because he was there backing her up. And there was a lot of, there were good places that she could have gone,
Incidentally, speaking about her father, when my partner and I were brought into the series, the very first episode that Glenn wanted us to write was an episode basically of Patton in space, which became the living legend. We called it The Last Legend. And the way we got the assignment was they were interested in us, and this was on a Monday, and they said, this is the story we would like you to do. We had no story, but it was basically do Patton in space, and he's got a daughter, and etc. And bring in the first act tomorrow. So we did, and he said, gee, that's good. Bring us the second act tomorrow. So we brought in the second act, and I have it at home, which is a little bit different than what ultimately ended, because Glenn took that away from us. He saw the potential in this episode, and he wrote the two-parter, and then we did Fire in Space. But at the time, they were negotiating with Anne.
Well,
so we didn't know if she was going to be a regular character or not. So we were writing her as if she was not, because you can never count on, all of that nonsense that goes back and forth.
When you brought in, Glenn called me and said, Glenn had spoken to me like a long time ago, like around at the time of the pilot, and it didn't work. And he called me and said, I'm going to write in a female character. Would you be interested in doing it? And I said, yes, I'd really be interested in talking to you about it. The next day, I got the first act. So I got your first
Oh, my God.
All I got was the first act.
Oh,
he
my
said, I'll
God.
send you something. So
That's
you guys
hysterical.
wrote the first act. I got the first act delivered to my house the next day, and that's all I got was the first act.
And that made you decide?
That's how I decided. That's how
What
I
great
said, you
writers.
bet. Off of 25 pages. And that was all I got.
I would be curious, where would you have wanted the character to go of Sheba?
That's a good question. I can't hear you.
Come to the microphone.
I didn't really want her to get married. I wanted to see her rise up the chain of command herself, become the colonel.
General Sheba.
I believe that's probably what she would have done. Yeah. I don't think marriage would have held her down, but she would have had a good time.
Well, not with the kids.
Somewhere along the line.
I'm very nervous.
So are we.
I really want to see this come back, and I wanted to know if there was anything that we could do, and if you know, other than writing. I mean, sometimes you feel like you write and nobody pays attention. And I wanted to know if most of the cast and crew were still interested in coming back.
I could speak for me, yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would do the show. Yeah. I mean, I know Dirk was talking to a friend of mine up in Canada and mentioned that that was one of his favorite all-time roles. So I think that he would love to do that. And by the way, for those of you that wonder where Dirk is, he's up in Alaska reshooting some scenes for a Disney movie. So that's the reason he couldn't be here. He expected to be here, and he had to cancel at the last second. So we're sorry about that.
But is there anything other than writing that we can do as fans to help out the process at all? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
I don't know. I heard some conversation several years ago that Glenn was still thinking about a feature or some...
I keep hearing stories. I heard a story that, in fact, an agent called me, who was close to me, and said that called, the name is skipping my brain right now, which happens all the time, who played the bad guy?
John
Colicos. They handled John, and they put a hold on him, and from Glenn Larson's office, because from what she said, They had a script. Somebody had gotten the rights to it, had written a script, and had come to Glenn. This is the story we heard, and they actually called the agency and said, we want to put a hold on John for the new show. But I don't believe that some of us were in the show, because what she said is that she didn't believe that we were in it. I believe it was just John and maybe new characters, I don't know. But that's the last thing that I heard.
And the only other thing I wanted to ask was, oh God, it's gone out of my brain. Never mind.
You can get back up later if you think of it.
Just a quick one for Stu. I noticed that Glenn has a credit for the music in the show, and I think on other shows as well. How much input does he or did he give you in terms of how it should sound, and is he involved in the composing process at all?
I've been answering that question for 15 years.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. I have never been in front of any people, even when I lecture something that has nothing to do with Galactica, if I don't get that question all the time. At times it was a collaboration. At times it wasn't. A lot of writers who are teams sometimes write separately and sometimes don't. I'm sure most of you people don't know that John Lennon and Paul McCartney never wrote a song together. They made a deal so that there wouldn't be any jealousy between them, that both their names would go on whatever song John wrote or whatever song Paul wrote. And therefore, when EMI, the company in England that was releasing the singles, would put it out, there would not be any jealousy as to which single went out, because both their names were on it. And of course what happened was George Harrison decided to write, and he wasn't part of this, and this kind of loused things up a little bit. The only reason I happen to know about it is because I did a series of albums called the Hollywood Strings at Capitol Records, which was classical versions or nice music or easy listening versions of the Beatles songs, and we used to try to put it out as soon as we could after the Beatles' new releases would come. So I would get tapes from England before they were put together into an album, and I'd have to try to guess which 10 or 11 were going to be used and which ones would be the hits. And I noticed when I spoke to people there and I said something about it, somebody said to me, well, it doesn't make any difference, you know, whether you do this one or that one. We're going to go this one, that one, this one, that one. I said, based on what? They said, based on who's singing the lead. I said, you mean not writing? He says, no. He says, it's nothing to do with that. It's they must have every other record. John sings, Paul sings, John sings, Paul sings, John sings, Paul sings. And as you know, they were a group that had a lot of problems through their thing. I got away from the field, but the point is that there were times where Glenn and I sat down together and actually discussed something, and there were other times when we didn't. And that's about the easiest way to put it. But we were, to some degree, a team of sorts. And so sometimes yes, sometimes no. All right? Sometimes it was nothing but a phone call and an idea from Glenn that said, you know, I think we should go this direction. So go that way and let me hear what you got. Other times it was like, I got an idea. Here, listen to this. Ba, 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 ba. Oh, good. Okay, see what you can do with that. That's about the way it was. Okay?
Thanks.
Thank you. I went on forever.
Hello, greetings from England. We've all heard about the difficulties that you experienced. Do you think that in some way the adversity actually helped improve the show?
Are you talking to all of us?
All of you, yes.
Yeah, I think so.
That it made you try harder to make it really good because it was so difficult.
There was an excitement about it being kind of last minute. It was frustrating, but it was you were on your toes, you know. There was no, yes, it's nice to have your scripts tons of time in advance and be prepared, but there was an energy about, my God, this is on the air in 4 days. How are we going to do this, you know?
That was a style of Glenn Larson's, by the way, which he did in all the shows that he did. People, you either liked Glenn or you hated his guts. But one of the reasons that he did this was he felt it created this frantic energy among his people that he would always try to make it the last second. He liked to work that way. He likes to work that way. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I put a D on the end of that. He likes to work that way. It's his style, and at times it's very successful.
I remember getting, we'd been sitting around for 2 days, 1 week, waiting for a go-ahead from Glenn. And Wednesday afternoon at 4:30, all we had was a paragraph. And Glenn said, do that one, but it's got to be in Mimeo Friday morning at 7 o'clock. So Jim and I stayed at the office. We did not work. We did not go home. We did not sleep. And we wrote 60, 65 pages, and they shot it practically as is. It was Murder in Space, Murder on the Rising Star, whatever.
My favorite episode.
Oh, what can I say? There you go.
By the way, with first-year shows, it's always like that. They're always writing, rewriting again, because nobody knows what's going to work. Everybody's hysterical. Everybody's afraid. Everybody's, trying to jockey for position. Everybody's trying to find what they think will be the best way. And so I think that first year really is a shakedown cruise, and everybody's scared, and everybody wants it to work. And so you're always getting a lot of things thrown at you at the last second. And you're right. Sometimes not knowing and having to be spontaneous and really jump in and commit, you come up with your best work. So
Did it also bring you closer as a team, the cast?
we were very close. We were very close as a group of actors, and usually in a lot of shows you don't have that. But we were very close, very supportive of each other.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, could I interrupt and introduce my writing partner, Jim Carlson, who finally got here?
I apologize. I'm staying with my